Whee! Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, back again with another episode of the awesomely named and awfully hosted Choose Your Own Adventure, the weekly medieval theme format where I, the crown Jules of WhatCulture.com, take a list chosen by you, yes you the person who was big brain enough to put chocolate drinking powder into their coffee to try and turn it into a mocha, but it's still too bitter. I've still messed up somehow. Yes, you get to decide what list I dole out to you each and every week. And this week we have none other to thank than Mr. K. That's Mr. K to you, my friend, for their suggestion of video games that, despite having the same name, were completely different depending on the console that you played them on. And this is the thing, my friend. While us wizened and aged gamers like myself may look back fondly on the console wars while looking at a low-resolution polygon fire and sipping Mountain Dew vintage from like a cognac glass and wiping Dorito crumbs from the corners of our elongated grey beards, there was actually another battle that was going on during the console wars that was happening right in front of us, and that was when games, despite having the same name, were released on, say, the Genesis, the Commodore 64, the Atari Jaguar, PlayStation 1, having the same name, but ended up being completely different experiences. So let's take a look at these utterly insane moments. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 insanely different versions of the same game. And you know the drill by now. Say hi to me here in the live chat, and also put your suggestions for next week's episode down in the comment section below. And by the way, I love you all. Just want to start with that. It's a big kiss. Let's crack on with this list. Number 8, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. Now, it's not exactly uncommon for fighting games to have sort of variances in their rosters depending on which console that you're playing on. I mean, you can look back to the likes of Soul Calibur 2, who got Spawn on the original Xbox, and Link on the GameCube, and Heihachi for the PlayStation 2, which I feel like they got a bit of a bum deal when you've got the other two that are like mythical, use weapons, and then you've got a guy in a nappy. However, despite the roster differences, the core gameplay usually remains the same, right? Wrong. Or at least in the case of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, who clearly did not get the message here. Because the NES, Genesis, and SNES versions might as well be completely different titles. For a start, the rosters outside of the classic pizza-loving Turtles wildly differ, with the NES version packing a measly 7 fighters into the roster against the Genesis is 8, and then the SNES is 10. And within the fighters is a world of difference itself, with each installment getting unique characters based on the comics, showcasing that a lot of love went into every iteration. Hell, even April O'Neil squares up for a few rounds. The plot diverges heavily as well. The NES version sees the Turtles battle between themselves to see who is best to take on the Shredder, whereas in the SNES version, the Turtles notice that a tournament of power is taking place and that Shredder has entered. They think that it will be a good place to defeat him for good, so they all sign up. But it's actually the Genesis version that does something, well, interesting with the plot, as here, you're in Dimension X, and you're traveling around taking on powerful pugilists in order to find out information on where your Master Splinter is being held by the one and only Krang. Bring me those turtles. He was freaky, wasn't he? The differences are so many, especially when you consider the impact that the different controller layouts had on the gameplay as well. And so you could have easily envisioned the team releasing this as 3 separate games and milking the concept for all it's worth. Though to be fair, Konami, who made these games, did realise their mistake and made that into their, well, core MO going forward. Let's piece it off and sell it back to you. And also, it reminds me of today's musical interlude. So Jazz and James, are you ready? And also, do you like pizza?
Yeah.
What's your weirdest topping that you put on pizza?
Oranges.
That's disgusting. Anyway, let's talk about today's musical interlude because we're going turtle power, baby. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Here are all the other ones. People power. April O'Neil is in a fighting game.
She's really hip.
It's a shame that she is also kind of lame.
Hey, get a grip.
When the Chrome Dome Killer attacks, Ray Fillet has got your back. Who the f*** are all these people? Who the f*** are all these people? Who the f*** are all these people? You should read a comic, then you'd know. Number 7. Gex Enter the Gecko. So, when the N64 dropped its massive plastic testicles on the table and yelled, "Look at this hardware," the world over was pretty wide-eyed at the entire spectacle, thinking to themselves, well, here be legends about to be made in front of us. Ninty's grey plastic monster is about to usher in a new age of all-time great gaming, right? Well, not when it came to Gex. Because when it came to the Green Gecko, the N64 had a total meltdown, offering up a much more inferior version to the PS1 counterpart, to the point where the fanbase has pretty much collectively agreed that this iteration of the classic platformer is the worst experience in the series. For a start, all of the bonus levels were completely scrapped in this version, as well as a huge amount of dialogue and all of the cutscenes, meaning that you won't have a clue as to what's going on in the N64 version, apart from it being tail time, apparently. Right, okay, I've got to catch the bus. James, what's the time, mate?
It's tail time, Jules.
That's not helping. And what it does offer in the form of an exclusive level based on the Titanic is an utter nightmare. And you want to know why? It's because it's a water-based level, and when have water-based levels ever been fun, ever? I rest my case. All of this strips the title of its charm, and unfortunately only highlights its shortcomings. Number 6. Aladdin. Now, while it would be very easy for me to just sit here and point to the fact that Aladdin has a freaking sword in the Genesis version of this game as reason as to why these two games are wildly different, I am a consummate professional, and so therefore I've provided a much more in-depth argument. The biggest actual difference, outside of the old pixelated poker, is how these games approach their central gameplay experience. For example, the Genesis version sticks much closer to the film on which it's based, following key plot points and adding in more levels to better reflect the flow of the narrative. Therefore, you end up feeling like you are playing through the movie rather than being a game that uses elements from the cinematic output as inspiration, which is definitely the route the SNES version goes down. Now, that's not to say that the SNES version is an inferior game, far from it. In fact, it's probably a better game overall because they focus here on the level design rather than actually just trying to rehash the story. This, coupled with a slightly easier challenge, makes the SNES version a supreme platforming game in its own right. Either way, there's a version here for everyone depending on how you want your pickle tickled. Number 5. Alien 3. While it is safe to say that Alien 3 may indeed be one of the lowest of low points in the entire sci-fi horror franchise, that's not to say that the video games that were spawned from its weird egg-sacky being were anything but glorious. However, it does seem that the project's infamous studio meddling and confused throughline does seem to have resulted in a pair of titles that share the same name, but very little else. Alien 3 for the SNES and Genesis couldn't be more different an experience, with the former playing much more like a Metroid game which focuses on exploration, puzzle solving and the constant building of a tense atmosphere, and the Genesis version prefers instead to dial up the action, hitting players with enemies around every corner and pushing them onward with hectic time limits. And you know what, this actually provides an interesting insight into the duality of the creation of fear in video games. For example, you look at Alien 3 for the SNES, and the fact that it draws things out longer and punctuates those scares a lot more because it's made you wait for them. That's kind of creating tension and atmosphere. Whereas on the other side, you've got the Genesis with its tight time limits and constant gameplay, meaning that you're constantly having to rush through, and that's an adrenaline-based fear. It's a very interesting mix here. Either way, depending on how you like your horror pickle tickled, Alien 3 has got you covered. Yes, I know I already used that line. So what? Number 4, The Adventures of Batman and Robin. When it comes to the Batman franchise, there are so many good games to pick from. The Arkham games, they're pure bliss. You can be the Bat! The Lego Batman titles are a hoot, you can build a bat! And even the VR title impressed fans with its attention to detail. I am the Bat! Yet there's actually one title in the bunch that is actually two great titles, and that's The Adventures of Batman and Robin. The core experience varies wildly depending on whether you got this for the Genesis or the SNES. As with Sega, you got a game that looks and plays an awful lot like Contra, which is by no means a bloody bad thing. And for the SNES version, you get a stylized love letter to the animated series with outstanding graphics and side-scrolling beat-em-up goodness being your bread and butter. It's one of the very few instances where only getting both of this same game, that grammatically does not sound correct, is actually really recommended because both are absolutely brilliant fun. If you like your balls to the walls action and the Contra stylings of the Genesis version, then my god, you are going to have a fun time with this one, as it is frantic to say the least. And if you adore the animated series like you all should, then you owe it to yourself to pick up the SNES version because it's just so beautiful. And that lovely fight that you have with Joker on the roller coaster, yes, mode 7, in your face. Love it. It's a satisfying thwonk from start to finish. Number 3, 13 exclusive multiplayer modes. Yes, you, the funny-looking child.
Yes, Mr. Developer for the video game company Rare. So what multiplayer modes are you thinking of putting in your upcoming video game GoldenEye?
A good question. All of them. This was basically the mic drop of a moment that was GoldenEye's multiplayer offering because, my god, man, they didn't leave anything on the table. They were just like, yep, if it's a multiplayer mode, it's going into this game. Multiplayer fun is our core experience. And unfortunately, they didn't leave much left for anyone else, because other FPS titles have been scrambling ever since to try and replicate even a fraction of its creativity and fun. Now, some found their own success, and others just settled into one mode and drilled down hard. And then we have the strange case of the otherwise almighty comic caper 13. Now, for some reason, 13 decided that the best way to approach the concept of multiplayer, which obviously if handled correctly could elevate even a mediocre game into the halls of couch party sessions, was to create multiplayer modes that were exclusive to each of the consoles that it dropped on, namely the PS2, original Xbox, and GameCube. Now, don't get me wrong, this didn't affect the core gameplay of the title, which was still utter bliss to play through, but what it did have was a significant impact on the longevity of the game on each platform. For you see, if you didn't have a good mode, if you didn't have a good multiplayer offering, then you're not likely to return to it, and this was especially felt on the GameCube, which didn't have online functionality, which means, why didn't they just give them all of the 3 modes? That just seems really unfair. It's just like, hey look, you can't even play online with your friends. Sucks to be you then. So as a result, the Xbox and PC versions stormed ahead of the competition thanks to higher player caps and arguably better modes, leaving the PS2 and GameCube fanbase lamenting at a choice that was actually made for them. Number 2, The Pirates of Darkwater. So back in the heyday of the Saturday morning cartoon, tons and tons of companies the world over were trying their best to capture the energy and indeed the attention of the Sugar Rush generation. And this led to some wild and utterly insane formats. Captain Bucky O'Hare, Street Sharks, Mummies Alive, Gargoyles, and so many more decided to be as utterly off the wall as possible in order to make kids actually pay attention for more than 10 bloody seconds. Therefore, the altogether less insane Pirates of Darkwater seemed to sail off into the fog without much notice. Such was its more grounded approach of pirates and seafaring shenanigans, which is a huge shame because this show actually had a pretty engaging central plot concerning hidden treasures and great evils looking to dominate the high seas. Still, it was popular enough to spawn its own video game. Well, technically 2, because the Sega Genesis and the SNES versions of this title are wildly different. Right, not to be too harsh on this game, but the SNES iteration, well, it played about as well as rolling around in a pile of used condoms. Aping the likes of Final Fight and Streets of Rage, and doing so with none of the charm and quite possibly the most ear-bleeding of soundtracks. Actually, that just reminds me, James, you had to capture some footage for this, didn't you? I'm really sorry, I should have warned you first. It's pretty bad.
What?
Therefore, it was up to the Genesis to save the reputation of Darkwater, and it did so by incorporating RPG elements into a platforming game to much greater success. The jump in terms of quality is night and day, and it's a shame that the cement shoes of the SNES version drowned any chance the Genesis game had of keeping the franchise afloat. R.I.P. Pirates of Darkwater, how little we cared about thee. Glub Glub. And number 1, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Now, I know what you might be thinking here. Sonic the Hedgehog was on a completely different console? This is huge! How did I not know about this? Wait a minute, maybe this is an inside job, that the console wars were actually a ploy by both companies to try and wrestle money from our wallets. But I have to slow you down there, my friend, because no, Sonic did not actually appear on Nintendo's console until much later down the line with obviously the Super Smash Bros. Cameo that he had going on over there, but he actually did appear twice on Sega's own consoles. Yes, that's right, we have an odd example of Sega releasing Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which is rightly regarded by many to be the finest game in the entire franchise. Blessed be it by Slime Jesus himself. Look at him come down. Look, he's got a little Sonic the Hedgehog ring above his head. How have we not noticed that before? Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, and where he goes. There he goes. Bye. Bye, mate. See ya. He's off to the chemical zone in the sky now. On 2 self-owned consoles that ended up being wildly different. Making matters even more strange is finding out that the Master System version of this game actually dropped a full year before the Genesis counterpart would come and steal the stage. While the original game isn't anything to sniff at, it differs wildly in its level layout and plot, this time focusing on rescuing Tails from Dr. Robotnik by paying him a ransom of Chaos Emeralds. The graphics naturally look much more simplistic on the Master System as well when compared to the lush vibrancy that the Genesis hits you with, and you're left with a pair of games that kind of look like the before and after photos of a bodybuilding transformation. It's still a great game, do not get me wrong, but it kind of feels Tesco values when compared to the M&S luxurious quality that was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis. My God, is it a good game. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 insanely different versions of the same game. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. And if you'd like to chat to me further about all things to do with video games, then you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, or you can swing by Instagram at RetroJ_Insta, where I do all of my model paintings. So you can come and check that out, get a bit of an insight into my day-to-day nerd life. But before I go, my friends, I just want to say one thing. I hope that you are treating yourself well, both mentally and physically, my friend, because you deserve the best things in life. You all do out there. You deserve love, happiness, and success, my friends, and do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. You are a massive ledge. Now go out there and absolutely smash it, all right? As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Thank you again for joining me here in the live chat, all you lovely people. It is the highlight of my week, and I'll see you soon. Peace.